India will not feature in the WTC final for the first time after having lost the Border Gavaskar Trophy in after a decade. So a lot of takeaways from what's been an excellent series, Ayaz. So let's start with the captain, Rohit Sharma. So my social media timelines are full of posts for and against Rohit Sharma, but unfortunately about 95% of them have nothing to do with cricket. It's all about PR machinery stuff and conspiracy theories. So let's talk about the cricket. Do you think this lean patch that he is going through, it's just another lean patch which every batter goes through, or do you see something more permanent in this decline?
It's very difficult to say whether it's a lean patch, temporary lean patch, or something even something graver. Because remember, apart from the series, the innings that he's played in Australia, where he's not just made runs at all, the preceding three Test matches were played in India against New Zealand, where also he didn't make runs. So he's had a fairly long sequence of poor scores, and it just and you have to factor in that he's about 37, pushing that, or 38, and therefore the age factor will be a consideration when the selectors decide whether in fact he needs to be retained as captain or even as a player. So while Rohit himself was quite categorical that though he had dropped himself from the test match, the last test match, you can use the word opted or rested, but he had, as captain, he had the power to drop himself, which he did. He exercised that power. So, but he's made it very plain there during the course of the match that he's not retiring. This is not his final match, and he could come back even 5 months later when India prepared for the Test series against England, and so on. So, I think it's going to be it's a bit of a wait and watch for cricket fans, for the players, a period of long suspense and lots of debates as we head into this new year with cricket assignments. So I think, and at the end of the day, I think Anirudh, it's also fair to consider that he's not the only guy who had a rough time in Australia. So there'll be a few other names which will be coming up for frequent discussions and and debate, and the spotlight will be on them as to what the future holds for them.
Yeah, so moving on to the other great batter who's been having a bad time, Virat Kohli. Now, with him, this issue with the ball just outside the off stump and the drive and getting nicked off to the cordon, that's been there for a bit. So, do you think, I mean, fitness wise, there's no question about his fitness, physical fitness at least, but the eyes do get weaker. There is no gym for the eyes. So, what is this problem? I mean, we know what the problem is, but what do you think he does with that? Because the cover drive is also a very productive shot for him. It's not like he can shelve that altogether. He was clearly frustrated during the series. In the last innings, he saw himself, he almost exploded after he got out. So he's been trying a lot of things in this series itself, be it with his stance or where he situates himself on the crease, but seems to be very frustrating. And what do you think happens now? Because the next time India have a test series, it's in England, where you would imagine with those swinging conditions that bowlers will pitch the ball up and will invite the drive more. So it's presumably only going to be harder for him.
Yeah, it will. I mean, it's quite extraordinary what's happened, what's transpired with Virat Kohli in this series or on this tour, because he started the tour in a in crackling form. He made a century in the first Test match at Perth and was one of the major contributors in India's victory. I mean, Bumrah was leading the way. There was Yashasvi Jaiswal who made a 161, but his 100 was also important. Rahul also made runs, and thereafter, quite staggeringly, he just went from failure to losing his temper and all kinds of things you don't associate with the biggest cricket brand in the world, so to speak, if I might use that word brand. But it's not just a brand, he's also a fabulous player, or has been. And the repeated failures, I think what was in a sense uh, frustrating for Virat himself and infuriating for his fans or India fans was the manner of his dismissal, because in 8 innings on the trot he got caught either in the slips or behind the wicket, playing pretty much the same kind of prod push, or maybe edging one of the dismissal was edging a drive. So it just seemed that the bowlers had his measure because of a technical lacuna or a technical flaw, or which could be even more serious, that there is something, it's in the old days Steve Waugh had an expression of what the Aussies used to do to the opponents, which was mental disintegration. And it seemed that Virat Kohli was mentally disintegrating, because when he batted for some length of time, which is when he made 36 or 17, his technique didn't look bad. He had spent about, when he made 36, he had spent about a couple of hours in the middle. and then he felt the same kind of, became a victim of the same failing. So it's the technical part is there, but somebody who's made 9,000 plus runs, to say that your technique is all wrong is not really the answer. Yes, technical flaws, mistakes can creep in. You go and sort it out in the nets, speak to players, get some advice. The coaches are there. But when the mental disintegration starts to happen, when you lose, when there's a crisis of confidence, when you don't trust your own judgment, in this series and even against New Zealand, we saw that, Anirudh, that he was never taking charge of the situation in the middle, never getting on top of the bowling. The bowlers were always on top of him, even when he made a few runs. So that's not the Virat Kohli who was the batsman of his generation. That Virat Kohli used to go there, stamp his authority, take charge of the situation, put India into positions from where they could win, and so on. So in my opinion, this has perhaps been his worst series ever. And what the selectors make of it from here, we'll have to wait and see. I liked quite, one thing that Sanjay Manjrekar made the point in the post-match analysis that he was doing for the broadcasters, when the issue of Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli also came up. See, and I think he was responding to what Rohit had said, that he had not retired, and therefore, So Sanjay made the point that players can retire when they want, but they are in the team when they are selected. So they don't select themselves, it's the selectors who do it. And I think the onus now has shifted from what Rohit Sharma thinks about his own future, or Virat Kohli thinks about his own future, which is fair enough. They can think as they, as they should. But it's now very important what the Indian selectors think of them going ahead.
Yeah, so speaking about the selectors, another headache they'll have going forward is the selection of Jasprit Bumrah, the man who got back spasms from carrying the team for all throughout the series. So that is the issue now. Like, it was an excellent performance from a generational bowler in Australia, but how do you manage his workload? Because given that he's a three format player and with Shami not back into the side now, there could be an over reliance on Bumrah. So how do they handle that going forward? Do you think he is rested for the Champions Trophy? One would assume that he would play the IPL and then the England series. So how long can this go on?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's $1 million question, and it's a really tough question to answer, and it's a very critical question. You're right, Anirudh, because without Bumrah right now, this attack would make India, if he's not there, the edge, the sting goes out of the attack. We saw that in the last session when India were defending 161, very meager score, very modest score, but without Bumrah, it just didn't look like they would do it. They had a few wickets to pick up without Bumrah, but the Aussie batsmen, took it. Once they knew that Bumrah is not there, their body language changed, and I suspect that is what is going to happen whenever India plays any opponent, in England, certainly in the Test match, or even in ODIs. You mentioned the Champions Trophy; that's a big assignment coming up, but it's not too far away. 4 weeks from now, he's already under medical care, so to speak. He's had scans and all in Australia. The extent of the seriousness of his injury is not known. But this is going to be a major headache. So there is the Virat Rohit headache that has to be sorted out. I'll add a little bit over there, which is the Shubman Gill. Who this was to be his tour, his coming of age tour, so to speak. That didn't happen. So there's a bit of an issue there in getting your batting order, sorted out. I think that there's a bit of an issue which will happen also about Ravindra Jadeja, who didn't enjoy the success that one thought he would. He wasn't utter failure like Rohit and Virat to that extent, but he didn't really, he just didn't, he didn't look like a match winner. And then we have no clue at all of what Mohammad Shami is up, what's happening with his progress. So bowling had been India's strength also in this series. Before that, against New Zealand. Before that, maybe for a year, 2 years. But now, if the bowling is also going to be, beleaguered and weak, then there are serious issues that are going to crop up. So selectors have a plate full of issues that they need to sort out. In the next few months.
Yeah, so which also brings me to head coach Gautam Gambhir. Now he's had a horrible time as head coach. India lost that ODI series in Sri Lanka. They lost at home in the Test series to New Zealand 3-0. Now they lost the Border Gavaskar Trophy. So, given these few months, what have you noticed in terms of difference or the style of the times of say a Shastri or a Dravid? So one of the things that we've noticed is that this reliance on almost makeshift all rounders, at least in the case of Nitish Kumar Reddy. but you have this Reddy, you have Washington Sundar, you have Jadeja, you have Ashwin. Instead of playing four specialist fast bowlers suited to those conditions, I mean, especially with the Sydney pitch, you saw how green it was. Why was there the decision to go with two spinners? What was the use of Washington Sundar in that situation? You could have played a batter instead. If you're not going to bowl him, get a proper batter then. So that's one of the issues. So what else have you seen with Gambhir's style, and what do you look at in terms of his future in case, let's say, India don't make it even to the semi-finals of the Champions Trophy? Is his job under threat then?
Yeah, I mean, many questions in one question, Anirudh. So let me just answer. I think that the management of the series, and I'm not necessarily blaming Gambhir because we don't know. There's also the captain. There's the team management. I mean, you had R. Ashwin walking out in the middle of a series. What the hell happened? What was the provocation for him to take such a precipitate decision? I mean, all kinds of reasons have been proffered, including by Ashwin, but this is very unusual, in the middle of a series for somebody to just walk out, retire from Test cricket, and say, "Okay, now it's happened before. MS Dhoni has done it, but he didn't walk out of the series. He retired from Test cricket altogether at that point in time." Then there are also to look at slightly, you know, the not so grim scenario. There's the success of Yashasvi Jaiswal. Nitish Kumar Reddy for me was the find of the series, and I think actually he'll be of great value in England because he swings the ball. He has to work up a little more pace, but he's got good control as a bowler, and he's a fabulous batsman. He's very correct. He's a swashbuckling batsman, but he's not a tonger. So now in the management of the talent, I mean, we saw in the series the batting order being changed, the players being dropped for whatever reason. In the first three Test matches on this tour, we had three different spinners. We had Washington Sundar, then Ravi Ashwin, then Jadeja coming in. Then in the last Test, Jadeja and Washington Sundar playing, and Washington Sundar getting what, maybe 1 or 2 overs. So India could have been better served with having another fast bowler, especially after Bumrah broke down. Of course, nobody knew Bumrah would break down. But I'm just saying that it seemed like there was chaos and confusion in strategy, in tactics, in man management, and all kinds of problems emerging from it.
Yeah. So, like I said, the Champions Trophy coming up. Before that, T20 series with South Africa also coming up, which will be quite exciting to see because now is the time that India has actually started to play like a T20 team. So, that and more coming up. So, that's it for this episode of Sports Home. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Andrew. We'll catch up soon.